Fantastic. Well, thank you everyone for coming out again. For those who are new, I'm Lama Rod. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm excited to be back with you. Really for my only engagement in the month of April. So there we go. I'm in between engagements right now. So what have I been doing? Well, thank you all thank you to everyone who came out to support us in Chicago. Eric was there as well with me. We had a wonderful time. I'll be back very soon in June, perhaps. We had a blast. And with some of our community members, Nancy and Larry, who's new to our community. So thank you for doing that. And we had a really wonderful time. It was so wonderful to meet folks in person that I hadn't met, just only have known online. So it was really great. And of course, last week I was in Jamaica. I was not there working, but of course, you people forced me to work when I'm away. So we did do free radicals from Jamaica, and that was fun. I got to talk about one of my favorite Jamaican scholars and writers, Sylvia Winter, and that went really well. And of course, next week I will be in the UK with some of you, just doing whatever we do in the UK, have tea, lots of tea, sipping tea, pouring tea as one does, talking about imperialism, questioning a monarchy, stuff like that is usually what I do when I'm with you folks in the UK. And we're going to do a retreat, so that's going to be really wonderful as well. So anyhow, in any case, busy, and we are almost ready to launch the book. Pre-orders. Now you can order it already, like that. We're not stopping you from doing that, but we're going to officially launch the cover art, which is beautiful, gorgeous work, hopefully pretty soon as well. Probably, I actually don't know, maybe beginning of May, maybe next week, we don't know yet. But the cover art is being finalized and it's going to blow you away. If the book doesn't blow you away, the cover art will. So, fantastic. So yeah, let me start out. Are there any questions about practice before we begin our practice? Any questions about the mantra practice? Anything that's come up around the practice? Someone has their Sharon, you have your hand raised.
I have a question. I'm having an experience, a new experience in practice, and I'm judging it as not pleasant.
Okay.
I sit, every morning, or what goes for morning with me. Sometimes it's later than the day, but when I get up, for a pretty extended period of time. And I usually find it a wonderfully pleasant experience, and have all kinds of adventures in consciousness. But the last couple of weeks, it just feels hard and flat.
Yeah.
And I've checked in with myself in as many ways as I know how to.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've been doing is just continuing to sit, no matter how it feels. But I wanted your comments on that.
Yeah. Well, what has changed in your routine? Your morning, like anything changed? Like you're like, actual routine? No, it's just,
Not that I can think of. Nothing has changed in my life recently.
and you haven't changed the practice in the mornings or anything like that?
And other than, I added the visualization you taught us with the mantra. Um, I visualize it kind of like the rings of Saturn going around the Buddha, around my heart, but also around my entire being.
Yeah. And has it ever like been different or fluctuated like this? Or is this the first time there's been,
It's
something?
fluctuated before, with my mood and how I feel, but not for this longer period of time.
And that began with the second phase of the mantra?
Not they didn't coincide. It's been since I've had the second phase of the mantra, but it didn't start immediately when I started that. I would say this has been going about 2 weeks, and you gave us that 3 or 4 weeks ago.
Yeah. Okay, and when you say not pleasant, can you be more scripted?
It feels like a chore more than a joy.
I see. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I don't think that you're doing anything wrong, but I do think the mantra is maybe digging up a new layer of work, some energy that you've kind of gone into autopilot, and so you're gonna have to kind of switch out of that and to just kind of expand a little more and to say whatever arises or whatever's arising in this moment is what I'm getting. And so for there it is, and letting go of pleasant or unpleasant, just saying this is the practice today. Letting go of those expectations, which is good for all of us.
Which is easier to say,
Yeah.
but not so easy to implement.
Yeah. Well, that's called practice. It's just, it's like that reminds me, actually, I think you would like this. I don't know if you've seen the Toni Morrison documentary Pieces of Me, and that part where Oprah is telling her story about calling Toni Morrison up, and no one's supposed to have Toni Morrison's number, but Oprah got it. And the first thing Toni says is like, "How did you get my number? I don't care who you are." And Oprah goes like, "Well, I'm Oprah. Like, I can just call people up and they tell me private information of famous people." But anyway, and then Oprah starts talking about, and telling Toni Morrison that, "Oh, your book is so hard to read. I had to read it twice." And then Toni Morrison goes, "Well, that's called reading. All you were doing was reading. It isn't hard." Like, but that's what I'm thinking about. It's like, oh, this is the practice. It's difficult. Well, that's practice. It's not supposed to be anything else, but like a little bit, of a little pushing, there's a little struggle there. When it's going really well, it's not really practice. You're just like kind of hanging out and chilling. Like having fun and just enjoying pleasure isn't necessarily a practice, but holding space for pleasure, right? For both holding space for pleasure and holding the same kind of space for discomfort or displeasure, that's practice, So yeah, just kind of keep opening, keep expanding and saying, yeah, this is the practice that I'm doing today. This is the experience today, and it's neither good or bad. It's just practice, And this is important for everyone too, because I get hooked to a good succession of practices and experiences. I'm like, oh yeah, now I'm really doing it now. And then something happens and you're like, oh shit, like I've had a bad practice experience. And actually it's doing what it's supposed to do. No one's ever guaranteed us consistency, you know. we don't get consistent until we get enlightened, until you've exhausted this whole belief in realness to begin with. Like after you get past that, everything is everything, you know? Yeah.
One thing this conversation uncovered for me is that I expect to be rewarded for my practice
Me
with
too.
good feelings and fun experiences.
Me too. I listen, I'm with you. I'm not saying that I'm different. I'm just, I'm like, absolutely, you know, and I go through periods just in general where like things are great, you know, like this energetically has been a rocky year for me. So I'm like in and out of turbulence. And I can get used to being in turbulence, you know, I'm practiced for that, you know, but when it starts getting good and things feel light and fluid, then I start getting worried. That's where I struggle. It's like, what am I not doing right because everything's great, you know? And that's very much the Tibetan kind of training. It's like in Tibetan culture, you don't trust the good stuff necessarily. It's like good stuff is like, oh wait, you know, we should be struggling and practicing. That's how I was trained, you know, to distrust the good thing and orient towards the difficult, because that's where the practice is. But I have to learn to hold space for the good as well as the struggle, you know, and letting go of waking up every day and saying, this is what I want. But instead, I just make prayers and aspirations that may I have the resources to hold whatever arises and to tend to whatever arises. And then whatever happens, happens, whatever comes, comes. Because the point is that I am training just to hold whatever arises and to respond to what needs to be responded to. So I can wake up feeling like shit tomorrow and it'll be okay. You know. But thank you for the question.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. Anyone else?
Anita.
Anita.
I had a question about sequence that I was hoping you could help with.
Yes.
So for the longest time, I used to practice by when I woke up, I wouldn't even open my eyes or even go to the bathroom, and I would meditate for a while. And I found it really very helpful to, not even fully come out of that sleep state and meditate.
Mhm.
And then I started doing something different where I'd wake up, go to the bathroom, and then do Nejang, yoga, 9 purifications, and then meditate. And I felt the benefits of doing it that way. But I also missed that there's a state of mind where I haven't fully woken up and doing meditation.
Mhm.
And I was curious if you have a recommendation of which way to go.
Well, ultimately, it's whatever feels generative for you. You know, that feels really rich and important for you. I love this idea of practicing before you even, really wake up well. That's a really potent space for practice. You know, coming out of sleeping or dreaming, like there's still a lot of fluidity and openness and expansion. It's a space before like the conceptuality of reality really gets super rooted, so there's still this incredible spaciousness, which I think is a really powerful space to offer prayers and aspirations and just to rest right within space itself, you know. And sometimes you may not want to do it, sometimes conditions change and maybe you want to get the day started before you practice. It's really up to you. Let there be, I know I shouldn't say this, but I will anyway. Let the practice tell you how it wants to arise. The hardest part of maintaining a practice is this kind of like rigidity that says, this is what I'm going to practice, this is what I'm going to do, this is how I'm going to do it. And I had to transition out of that space because it felt really manipulative in a way, and it wasn't addressing how different I was from day to day and from moment to moment, and I've gone through all kinds of cycles and periods where I've gotten up really early to practice, or I practice late at night, or practice in the middle of the day, and then all the practices change. Like I go through all kinds of periods like that, and it's fine. We're working with different energies all the time, and different energies require different space, different practices, and so forth. So whatever feels natural and authentic for you is what you should do, and allow it to change.
Mm. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, anything else? Anyone else before we get into the work? And there'll be time for questions at the end as well. But I just wanted to make sure I get any practice questions that may be important as we go into our practice. Okay, well, if there is nothing else, let me just check the chat as well. Okay. Thank you to everyone. I know I'm looking at people, and this is your first time here, so welcome. It's really lovely to see that as well. Okay. So I want to continue working with energy of spring in the practice with Medicine Buddha. And going back to, again, like I'm really into this right now, which is just how do we practice this really gradual awakening and opening into the consciousness of Medicine Buddha, right? Which is the consciousness of, Buddha nature itself, the essence, and connecting to, well, just practicing, just allowing. Again, this kind of blooming metaphor and language where we imagine ourselves flowers blooming, which is for me one of the most beautiful kind of settling and expansive practices that I do. It's just sitting and just opening, blossoming into this energy that's surrounding me, right? And letting myself deeply absorb, drink in that energy, and then slowly begin to radiate that energy outward, right, into the world around me. So it's this idea of drinking as we pour, right? As the Kashi lineage teaches, and drinking as we pour, like as I am absorbing the energy of Medicine Buddha, or the energy of care, right, from my benefactors, I'm deeply absorbing that, and then imagining that I'm being filled with that energy, and then imagining that I begin to radiate the same energy of care, life into the world around me. I don't have to feel as if I'm being depleted. Right? And this is a really potent space to practice mantra as well, particularly this second phase of the mantra of imagining the mantra circle, right, surrounding the heart. And you're doing this really subtle but profound, like subtle energy work. So you're really like really digging into the chakras and the channels and everything, and really just this presence and movement of different kinds of energy, prana, right, and shakti, you know, within the body itself. And being is that in this hemisphere we are moving into spring. That spring, right, is about this awakening, right? So many of the religious observations and practices, you know, over the past month or so have been really about preparing to awaken, you know. Jesus just resurrected again yesterday for, you know, I don't know how many times he's resurrected, but, you know, but that kind of acknowledgement that there's life after death, right? Like we've been in winter and we've been dead in a way, in that sense. And now it's time to start taking in energy so we can actually resurrect ourselves, come back, right? And of course, you're saying, why do I want to come back and get into all of this in the world? Because you won't ever experience liberation until you actually start meeting the world and consuming the chaos of the world, right? There's no liberation running away. There's only liberation running into, you know, running into, or leaning rather, into the confusion, the sadness, right? The anger, the despair. But you don't have to just lean into it and say, I'm going to lean into it, but we call in the energy that we need. Make it more gentle than this aggressive, like, I'm just going to do this, you know? And that's where I come from as well. I come from this place where I'm just like, I'm just going to do it. You know, I'm just going to like go right and just do it. And whatever happens, happens. And that's not it's really not the smartest way to do this, because there, again, so much energy, right, for us to call in into our experience so that that energy can support us, right? So how do we make sense of the violence that we're facing? Well, how about first calling in the energy and beginning to like actually radiate this care back into the places that we're most confused about, you know? Send this energy into the places that we're trying to figure out. Instead of just thinking that we're just alone and we're just going to do it, you know. It's not Nike, we're not just going to do it, you know. And that's something that I think, I know so many of us are afraid and anxious about the days ahead. And we will be even more anxious when we're continuing to choose being shut down and closed off from the resources that are continually always being offered to us, you know, from the world, from phenomena, from our benefactors, our homecoming circles, and so forth. And this is where I really like start my practice. My practice is really not so formal. My ceremony practices and ritual practices are very formal. There are things that I have to do, right, to set up a ceremony and a ritual to protect that space and to protect the work that's happening. But just in my regular practice, this is how I begin, right? I begin to just turn my attention into really the experience of energy itself. right? And that's the fluidity, that's space, right? That is this feeling that everything is illusionary, right? That everything isn't as solid as it looks, right? That there's this malleability, if that's a word, right? Everything's malleable and plastic in a way that like it's shapeable, right? Like even my emotional and mental experiences are just expressions of energy and are also malleable and fluid, right? And of course, this is like for you professional Tibetan Buddhists, this is pointing out instructions, right? Like this is all we're doing traditionally, and this is just pointing out the nature of the mind, right? Like saying, yeah, everything's energy, everything's moving, everything's fluid, everything's impermanent, right? I know some of you are coming into the space, you feel really stuck, right? And stuckness comes from shutting down and contracting around experiences. Like you're just kind of collapsed into it. You're fixated, you're clinging to it. That's the stuckness, right? And you say, oh, this isn't moving, this isn't going anywhere. It can't go anywhere because you're clamping down on it, right? Because somehow you're either self-identifying with the experience, and therefore it's not going to go anywhere because that's who you think you are, right? Or it's like you're clamping down on it because it feels comfortable. You're holding on for dear life, right? And so what we always have to do, regardless of the experience itself, is that we actually have to start expanding from the experience itself, coming back into this acknowledgement and experience of the fluidity, the movement of everything, that everything's, again, workable, right? Everything is just an expression of emptiness, which is to say is also an expression, of the nature of our minds, this great sea of conscious energy, right? And this is the nature of the mind. So whatever it feels like you're really stuck in or around, I wonder if you can just kind of drop like I guess the phrase is a truth bomb. Like, I don't know, true, I don't know what I would call it, but you drop this reflection into what feels stuck, right? And this reflection this is just an expression of my mind. This is emptiness. This is energy. This is actually a very fluid experience if I can just relax and settle. Of course, when you do that, you're opening yourself up to experiencing. So you're beginning to get curious about what this experience is actually like in our minds, and maybe in your bodies if you're there today in this practice. Some of us actually don't know what fear and anxiety feels like because you've been spending your time just habitually reacting to it, But when we're doing a practice like this, you're coming into relationship with the experience itself. And then you can actually figure out exactly what fear, anxiety, or sadness is, in the same way that I had to do with anger many years ago. Like I had to figure out what anger was, because I'd never experienced it, but I could react to it. and create a lot of harm to myself and others. What am I so afraid of? Right? Is the question is, well, why do I keep running away from this experience? Why do I keep collapsing into it instead of allowing it to expand, or allowing my awareness of self to expand around the experience itself? And again, this is really my basic practice here. When I feel stuck, this is exactly what I do. I say, oh, I'm stuck, right? I'm not allowing this experience to be. I'm not giving room and space and air to this experience, but I'm getting hooked by it. It's consuming me, it's swallowing me, right? And my awareness, particularly my awareness, is what should be consuming this experience, holding this experience, not the other way around. This experience shouldn't be holding me. That creates a different relationship. It creates a more liberatory relationship to what we're experiencing. And this is why so many of us feel so overwhelmed and so shut down and with everything that's happening. And it's a lot, but it's not impossible, right? But it takes practice to train in allowing ourselves to continually open to the discomfort of the world right now. And the more you develop a confidence in the nature of reality, the more you begin to believe and experience the emptiness of things, the more courageous you become, right? The more loving and compassionate you become, right? And because you begin to realize and understand that this is just an illusion, it's just a dream that's happening, right? There's no inherent here, or there's no there, right? There's no here, nor is there a there. But of course, right, what keeps us from this space, right? What keeps us from touching into this kind of, pointing out the mind, right? And opening to the spaciousness that holds really difficult energy. What are you really afraid of? Too is a question. Right? Am I really afraid of what's happening in the world, or am I afraid of dying? Because once we get space around the fear of our own death, then that's where the space around living begins to really expand, right? And so much, again, right? So much is happening, so much has been lost, so much that we're struggling with. We're so frustrated, we're angry, we're pissed, we're, sad. And we can hold all of this and allow it to be there. And the space that begins to open is the birthplace of all the Buddhas. It is the birthplace of every Buddha that has arisen consciously to help beings get free. It is the space that every future Buddha will arise from in the future to help beings get free. This is the space that we, whoever or whatever we are, this one here, right? This is the space that this one here will one day in the future reawaken in as the Buddha. And I know it doesn't sound so glamorous or sexy. I know you came here to get, something really exciting, and fun, but there's nothing more exciting, right, than being pointed into the nature of the mind. I would have to say, there would never be a party as glamorous as the party that you're having right now in your practice. This is as good as it gets. As we were talking about earlier, it's like this is the space where things can come and go. This is the space where we can kind of let go of expectations and say, whatever arises, arises. Right? To do that first, to do that acceptance and holding first, and then you figure out what you're going to do, how you're going to respond, but not the other way around. Right? You have to understand. I know this is a really subtle teaching here, but like you have to start here before you try to get somewhere else. Right? Touch this ground, this space, this openness, this emptiness, this fluidity, right? Disrupt reactivity, transition into responsiveness and holding. Just a little bit longer here before we move deeper into the practice. And then from the space, our awareness can begin to hold other things, so we can begin to hold the experience of our bodies and the weight of our bodies and everything else, temperature, light, right? Other thoughts, other emotions. And as the space deepens, you begin to really understand really that so much of what we, not everything, but a lot of what we experience as being antagonistic in the world and in living really originates in the struggle that we have to hold space for our own experiences in the moment. The more space we hold for ourselves, the more clearly we're able to perceive the world around us. And it's not that violence disappears. It's not that the silliness that we're engaged in disappears, but what does happen is we get clear about what's actually happening. We're not fighting with trying to be in a relationship with what's coming up for us. Like, we've settled that. We're holding space for it. Therefore, I can actually go forward and say, you know what, how can I meet the suffering of others in a really clear way where I'm not being distracted and shut down by my own suffering? You know? That everything, there's so much of what we experience once we get really grounded in this practice that, well, let me rephrase that, that once we get grounded more in this practice, we begin to understand that everything isn't about me, right? That everything isn't about me. But as long as I struggle with the experiences in my mind and body, everything does become about me. And the more we open and rest in this space, the more we begin to reduce the negative impacts that we have in the world and in our relationships. So there is a decrease in violence and suffering that begins to happen because we're not actively reacting to everything, creating more tension, more friction, more misunderstanding. So things do get clear, right? And in that way, we do our own work and become less work for others. Like, this is the work. This space of holding, being with, expanding, responding, not reacting. This is the primary work. As I say in the New Saints, this is one form of magic for the New Saint, is this space that I can choose to hold and respond to instead of habitually reacting to. This is power. Responsiveness is one of the most powerful practices that we can engage in, to choose. And so from this space, let's move a little deeper into our practice. And again, you know, what would it be like to imagine that we were flowers? You know, and of course, this is going to be weird for those of you who are new, but quite frankly, this is the least weirdest thing we've done in this practice. So just bear with me, bear with. So imagining that you're whatever your favorite flower, like you're this beautiful flower. I'm a rose. So I'm a red rose. That's just a bud. So it's a closed flower. So you're imagining yourself to be a beautiful closed flower. So you're beautiful and delicate. And this expression of spring and life. You're an expression of the natural world of the earth. Right? If we can be a Buddha, we can be a flower. And like it works all kinds of ways. And here's the mudra for this practice. Now, professional Tibetan Buddhist, I made this up, right? I'm saying this too because I just spent the weekend at Northwestern in Chicago with all the PhD students, and all, so which I loved. I loved all of you, by the way. But you can just make mantras up. I'm sorry, I said the quiet part out loud. I meant you can make up mudras. And a mudra is, yes, it's a movement, right? Often done with hands, but it can be, I think, asana, right? Movement like asana and posture is also a mudra, but a mudra is a gesture that kind of points us back into emptiness itself, into the nature of things. So this is like my closed bud mudra, you know. And of course, as we move deeper into the practice, this bud is going to open, right? As you're opening in the practice, your hand opens, right? And to feel that space, right? That openness is going to correspond to the mental, energetic experience within the practice itself. So you can do this, like you can do this practice once we move deeper into the practice of the opening, the flowering mudra. So you get to this place where you have open palms. You don't have to use both your hands, but an open palm, meaning that like, oh, I have the space to make choices. Like I'm not grabbing on to anything, right? I'm just this open flower, lotus, spacious, taking in, right? Everything that's being offered, all the energy radiating. I am open. It's like a solar panel, right? Capturing all of the solar energy. Right. So let's begin. Let's just go back a little bit and catch the practice at the beginning. So going back into imagining ourselves as closed flowers. If you want to be really thematic, just imagine yourself to be a closed lotus. If you don't want to be creative, imagine yourself as a lotus. Now, so in the space around us, we're calling to the space all of our benefactors, all the representations of our 7 homecomings benefactors. So all of our teachers and guides and mentors and the communities that love us. So any being that loves us, that wants us to be free and safe and happy, imagining that they're just beginning to fill up the space all around us, the top, bottom, all around us, under us. And again, for those of you who are new to this kind of practice, to the benefactors practice, just imagining that you're surrounded by every being who loves you. Again, every being. You don't have to know who these beings are, but just in your mind, you're saying, may all the beings who love me just arrive in the space around me. And in my practice, I imagine that I'm just in the universe and all these stars and planets are surrounding me, right? And these stars and planets are all the beings who love me. I'm just surrounded by the light of all these beings. And as they begin to radiate this energy of care into the space around me, they begin to glow even brighter, right? And they begin to light up the space around me. So I begin to imagine I'm just sitting in this profound experience of light. And again, this light is the radiance of care for us from all these beings who love us. And we're still a closed flower, right? And this is a place that you can stay. Like, this is a stage of the practice that I think is really powerful, just to sit and be surrounded by the light of care and love from countless beings who love us. This is a great space just to abide in. So you can just stay here and feel that, imagine that, you know, if you don't want to continue. But to continue, if you would like to continue, we begin to imagine that this light, this energy of care, begins to slowly be absorbed by us. Like, this energy begins to sink into us as flowers, as closed flowers. And we feel this light filling us up. And this light, this care becomes energy that we use to slowly begin to blossom. Right? So again, you can use your mudra here. And slowly, you begin to slowly blossom. And as your hand, your fingers uncoil, you begin to imagine that you as this flower, that your petals, one by one, begins to slowly peel back. Opening more fully to this radiance of care and light around us. And our hearts, you know, the core of us as flowers opens, the pistil, the stamen, that part of the flower, you know, responsible, you know, for reproduction, right? That begins to be exposed as well. So the totality of ourselves, our beautiful petals and our inner autonomy of pistils and stamens and everything just begins to open. And we're being deeply saturated by this energy of care that our benefactors are radiating into us. And again, this could be a space that you stay in as well. And if you're sitting, you can sit with your palms open, in your lap, whatever feels appropriate. But this kind of open palm gesture is really about receiving and opening to the care that's being radiated. And let this energy sink down into your most primary relative expression, right? It meaning that let this energy sink down through your molecules and cells, down into your atoms, and even past your atoms back into emptiness itself. So this energy, this care that we're absorbing, that we're blooming and blossoming into, is actually touching back into emptiness itself, is touching back into its own nature, like the energy is moving through us back into emptiness itself. So we're going to transition into our mantra here, into Medicine Buddha's main mantra, Teata, Om Begenze, Maha Begenze, Rasa Sumungate Soha. And in the mantra itself is really activating the consciousness of Medicine Buddha. So this becomes even more energized in a way through the mantra. And as we begin the mantra, I really encourage you to offer or to let go of everything that you're really stuck around. And imagine that the mantra as well, this energy of care, begins to dissolve those really rough energies and experiences. Letting them go and letting them just kind of float into the expansiveness of all this energy. Let the energy, let the thing that we're stuck around return back to its fundamental expression as energy, as something fluid and moving, malleable. Right? So we begin. O ea taung begenze, ma begenze, rasa sumunga te soha. Ea taung begenze, 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 razo sumo gatte soa. Deyada, 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 begenze, 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 razo Deyada, begenze, 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 razo sumo gatte soa. 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 Deyada, begenze, 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 We're gonna turn my attention to the prayer requests. And as we begin to offer prayer requests, again, just consciously calling into the space, again, all of our benefactors, all the beings who can support the fruition of our prayers and requests and aspirations. All the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, all beings of light, all benevolent ancestors, all the guardians and protectors of the lands that we're living and practicing on. We call into the space, the earth, and all the elements. We call in all helpers, all helpers in the universe to gather into the space as we offer our prayers. We offer, one second. We offer prayers for R's health as they try and recover from police brutality. Offering prayers for Carl and Francesca that they each allow themselves to just keep sitting and have confidence in their creativity through successes and setbacks alike. Offering prayers for Elaine dealing with her injury and health issues. Offering prayers for Cynthia in dealing with depression, grief, and overwhelm. Offering prayers for Bryn and her illness and health issues. Offering prayers for Kent that depression loosens and lifts. Offering prayers for Jennifer and Liz and Karen, who are all caretaking roles with parents and for their parents and navigating elder stages of life. Offering prayers for Shirley and her mom dealing with life after her father's passing. Offering prayers for our new family project, honoring the land, our ancestors, and family connections. We're offering prayers for my son, that he may experience healing with his full wisdom mind, and for myself, may my tender heart heal. Offering prayers for amplifying the wisdom of the ancestors, that the voices of all life forms may converge, rise, be heard, and healed. Offering prayers for Jay while she reaches out for help and takes steps to call on the help of extended family, and that help comes quickly. Offering prayers for my shifting vocation, that my life continues to change, to align with my values, and that the path is clean and clear. Offering prayers for Quinn's health. Offering prayers for JB and his depression and long COVID. Offering prayers for R that she gather the bravery to build connections and feel the joy of friendships, and that she can have that too. Offering prayers of gratitude for all my communities, prayers of gratitude for my benefactor circle, prayers of gratitude for my teachers alive and in spirit, offering prayers for my husband and I that we can stand in our wounded areas while holding one another, offering prayers for health and healing for my friend's son who recently attempted suicide and the whole family, offering prayers for me as I continue to recover from COVID, prayers for renewal and restoration. Offering prayers for the mental health of myself, my daughter and her husband, prayers for AO that she continues the help she needs, that she gets the help that she needs and is and feels supported. Offering prayers for all the younger versions of myself that are revisiting old wounds. May I live and breathe with ease, and may the tears flow as needed. Thank you. Prayers for PC, who continues to confront colonial violence and separation. May she know space even in confinement. May she know connection through the pain of separation. Offering prayers for my ongoing releasing of what could have been. Prayers for the students in my classes. May they experience ease and space as the demands of institutional time through illusion, after illusion of scarcity and lack. Prayers that I can find clarity with a family decision. Prayers that I might have less pain and more ease. Prayers that all may have less pain and more ease. Offering prayers for my parents. Prayers for me as I do not feel well. Prayers that I and all beings be well and experience ease of being. Prayers for the liberation of all beings in all realms and all times and spaces. Ashil. Prayers for Victor, who recently began to hear voices again and is feeling afraid. Prayers for Sam Starling, who entered the Bardo last Thursday, and his life partner since childhood, Mary. For Shava, sounds like Hava, so for Hava, Bailey, who had a long biopsy last Friday and isn't feeling well at all. Prayers for stability and strength as I'm trying to finish a piece of writing due on Wednesday that is stirring up all sorts of very painful memories for all the victims of gun violence and their families, for all those oppressed around the world. For my body, which is having a bit of a rough go of it right now. Prayers for Saul, Mel, Nicola, Patrice, and all the friends in my BIPOC Spoonies group. Much gratitude for all your prayers. Offering prayers for all survivors of child sexual abuse, that they may be believed, supported, and provided with the resources that they need to heal. Prayers for my brother, prayers for my mother who is dealing with health challenge that may turn out to be her third cancer in 5 years. Offering prayers for Krista and her IVF journey, prayers for Kaj and Susanna, prayers for Ada, Orion, Cara, and Siggy, prayers for Michelle and Kwas and Penelope, prayers for Margot and Craig. Offering prayers for my mom as she recovers from COVID, prayers that I can become more kind and compassionate with her, and for the healing and strengthening of our connection and relationship. Prayers for the movement that is building in Tennessee against fascism and continued homophobia, transphobia, colonialization, and white supremacy. Prayers for the protection of those involved and for liberation for all. Offering prayers for my sister Eliza. Offering prayers for those struggling with anxiety, depression, mental illness, and they may connect with resources, support, light, inspiration that they need. And may those working to support them be blessed and capable. May all be liberated. And prayers for myself and Ariel. And I would like to offer prayers for let's see, I'm sorry, 1 second. Prayers for Janica Jaya, who transitioned into the Bordeaux very recently, offering prayers for his mother and his grief, and her grief. Offering prayers for all authentic teachers and guides and elders. We continue to pray for the liberation of all beings from all systems of violence and all systems that restrict needed resources to those who need it to be well and happy and safe. We continue to pray for the freedom of all beings, the liberation of all beings from the state of delusion, which I call the carceral state, into the experience of complete, utter liberation, which is the acknowledgement and the realization of the emptiness of all phenomena. May we be liberated back to our most fundamental expressions. And may all of those prayers, all the prayers in this space that are still unarticulated, be blessed and guided, and may all those in this space as well, all of you, may you experience the deepest well-being, happiness, joy, freedom, and safety. May you have everything that you need to be well, that you receive the care that you need, that you have access to all the resources for yourself and for all those connected to you. So as we go back into our mantra practice, you can continue to just open and receive this energy of care, or you can begin to radiate some of this energy out back into the world as well. Just doing whatever feels natural. If you need to just continue receiving care and energy, please continue to do that. And we all, regardless of what we choose to do, our practice is supporting and energizing all those beings we just offered our prayers to. And we begin to have the confidence that all the energies around all the prayers and the situations and circumstances of all those we've offered prayers for, that the energy of these circumstances and situations begin to shift and change. Clarity begins to awaken, potential begins to reawaken. And trusting the practice and all these enlightened beings to work on our behalf. Oh, Raza Sumunga Te Soa. Teyaza Om Veganze Veganze Mahaveganze Radhasumagadasoha Teyaza Veganze Veganze Mahaveganze Radhasumagadasoha Teyaza Om 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 Veganze Veganze Mahaveganze Radhasumagadasoha. Now turning our attention back out into the space around us, acknowledging our benefactors who are like stars in the galaxy around us, that they dissolve into the white light that they're radiating, and that all that light is absorbed back into me as this precious bloom flower. And slowly, ourselves as flowers begin to dissolve into emptiness itself. And our awareness simply expands, uncurls into space and emptiness itself. So slowly allow yourself to re-arise back into your body, bringing attention to the seat. Noticing the weight of your body making contact with the seat. Reawakening the body through some simple movements. Maybe a few deep breaths. And then we'll turn our attention to Shantideva's prayer. We'll recite this 3 times, and you can find that in the chat box. May I be a protector to those without protection, a leader for those who journey, and a boat, a bridge, a passage for those desiring the further shore. May the pain of every living creature be completely cleared away. May I be the doctor and the medicine, and may I be the nurse for all sick beings in the world until everyone is healed. Just like space and the great elements such as earth, I always support the life of all the boundless creatures, and until they pass away from pain, I also be the source of life for all the realms of varied beings that reach into the ends of space. May I be a protector to those without protection, a leader for those who journey, in a boat, a bridge, a passage for those desiring the further shore. May the pain of every living creature be completely cleared away. May I be the doctor and the medicine, and may I be the nurse for all sick beings in the world until everyone is healed. Just like space and the great elements such as earth, I always support the life of all the boundless creatures, and until they pass away from pain, I also be the source of life for all the realms of varied beings that reach into the ends of space. And finally, may I be a protector to those without protection, a leader for those who journey, and a boat, a bridge, a passage for those desiring the further shore. May the pain of every living creature be completely cleared away. May I be the doctor and the medicine, and may I be the nurse for all sick beings in the world until everyone is healed. Just like space and the great elements such as earth, may I always support the life of all the boundless creatures, and until they pass away from pain, may I also be the source of life for all the realms of varied beings that reach unto the ends of space. All right. Well, thank you everyone so much for your practice. Some of you were doing some really heavy journeying work. Would anyone like to come on on camera and talk about that? I'm just really curious about where some of you went and what you got. If you would like to. I know sometimes this information isn't there to be offered publicly, but did anyone go in?
Hi, Lama Rod. My name is Cliff.
Hey, Cliff.
Thank you so much for hosting. My journey was so beautiful. It was towards the end, it just really, I felt myself settling into the nothingness that became everything. And it was like how you fold a croissant. It was like that, just blackness on blackness on blackness. And then just this emerged being. And the whole time I was just a little poppy. This just felt like a little poppy flower because there's so much texture and so much within them and they're so vibrant, but I guess maybe I'm a little bit peculiar on the outside till you get to the inside. That was my journey.
Thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you.
I don't want to speak too much because I think there, well, I guess there's not. Uh, Sorry, I thought that was like a uh, thing. Anyway, yeah, it's really important. No, I don't know. No one ever taught me this in practice, but I just kind of had to figure it out that like there are just places that you go, and if you can allow yourself to kind of journey into those places, it can be really fruitful. You know, the whole thing about, and for those of you who are taking this Seven Homecomings course with me, I'm going to talk more about this in that course, but how we teach practices like this. But one of the key things when we're leading practices like this, I have no idea what's going to happen with you all. Like I don't know if you're holding the visualizations. I don't know where you're going. I don't know what you're hearing. Like I can't control that, right? I can offer something, but what I offer are forms that are familiar to me, are familiar enough for me to transmit something that can't be articulated. It's energy, it's awareness, it's consciousness, maybe, but like I create forms that I transmit to you. And once that transmission is handed over, it becomes something that you shape into something that you need, that's appropriate for you to work with, right? But it's still something that I can channel through into your practice, right? So I can hold the visualization and the forms that I offer, but it may become something completely different, and that's fine, right? And you may go places, you may do things, but I wanted just to kind of bring this up because there was such a strong feeling of many of you going somewhere and having an experience. I just wanted to validate that, right? And to normalize that kind of experience and practice. But going back to what we were talking about earlier, not to get used to it either. Like you had an experience, you may still be having an experience, but it'll probably end and it'll be okay. Just let it go. Okay. There's one other question too. Someone,
Andy.
Yeah.
Hi, Lama Rod. It's so nice to see you again. I wanted to share an experience, a type of experience that I'll have from time to time, and just see if you have any reflection on it. I don't know. My feeling is that I should just normalize it. Every once in a while, I will have a feeling like I'm taking a very taboo risk, even though it doesn't make sense that I would be. And I'm imagining something that I feel like I don't have permission to. On paper, it's all very benign. But the feeling I have inside is that I'm not allowed. But then I go ahead and allow the imagining. And then what will happen from time to time is I will feel, and it's often outside where this occurs, I will feel like the world is hyper real and that everything has an invisible, magnificent stature to it. And that we are all in a shared space, and it's absolutely lovely. It takes a lot of effort to stay there, because to stay there, the only way I can stay there is to continually just offer it all back as a continuous act of gratitude. And then the thread is eventually broken. But I stay in the glow, and then there's an intense loneliness that follows it. And then that takes a few days of like depression, and then I kind of even out. Does this sound familiar?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely really intense, there is, let me just give me just 1 second to process something. The taboo, right? It's like so much of that has to do with ego, right? When we're doing this kind of practice, what we're doing is practicing recognizing ego as illusion, which means that we begin to let go of fixation. And that's going to send a lot of like emergency energies. Like that, you can feel that as fear, terror, right? You can read it as taboo. Like, I'm not supposed to be doing this. You know, I'm not supposed to be letting go of the ego like this, right? And that space that we gradually learn how to normalize, like bit by bit. Like, you just can't do the whole thing all together, but like there's a bit by bit, we begin to be in relationship to what it feels like to gradually open up around the ego and the sense of self, right? And everything becomes hyper real, and you know, there's this sense of space and emptiness, then it crashes. Maybe it doesn't crash, but the loneliness, right, is in many ways how we snap back around the sense of ego, and we get super fixated on ego, where
Yeah.
it's me and other, and you
This
know,
all happened in the context of my family, and I'm feeling gratitude for my family, but I'm like the sole spiritual goober in the family. So I'm alone here.
yeah. I mean, I hear you, absolutely. You know, sometimes we have to be careful with that idea that like I'm the only one, you
Okay.
know. I think it may be that certain members of your family are experiencing the spiritual in a certain way that like may not align with your understanding, you know, or they may not use the language that you're using, you know, but we can have this deep spiritual life and not feel separated from those that we may whom we may think don't have that, right? So in general, our spiritual practice and work should be bringing us closer to people regardless of their practice. You know, that at no point should I say, oh, I'm special or I'm better or whatever, you know, but that my practice actually brings me closer.
That is what I want. And I
Yeah.
fear for the opposite. So it's lovely to hear you say that.
Yeah. Yeah. Let
Do I
love.
normalize it?
Hmm?
Do I normalize it?
Mhm.
Okay. Thank you,
Yeah.
Lama. You're the best.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Are you
Yeah.
coming to California anytime?
My God, I literally every day, I literally think or tell someone that I need to be in California.
I'll try to find a way for you to come out here.
I can just come. Like I can
Just
just be
come.
there. Like there's nothing holding me back, but like literally, like, and then people will be like, when are you coming back? When are you gonna do something?
Now the
Probably,
chat's blowing up with all the places you need to come.
oh, I know. But there's all these other places that I've never been. I'm like, oh, because I've been taught in Chicago, so I had to go to Chicago, and that was really wonderful, you know. But yeah, there's so many people that I miss seeing and being with, you know, particularly in the Bay Area and LA as well. So anyway, that's the aspirations out there. I'll be back. But thank you everyone for your practices. Again, I won't be in Vancouver. I will be in Toronto in June. So we'll be getting those details up as well, and whatever else happens. But yeah, I mean, if you want me to come, just, you know, whatever, send a message to the website, and so we'll have the request, and you know, miracles happen, you know. And I think that's it. I feel like there was something I was supposed to mention about something. But I won't see you again until May. So I again will see everyone, the UK folks, beginning Monday through the beginning of May. And this is what I wanted to say. Thank you to all the practice leaders really holding space for this community. It's so important that we show up and just build community around the practice itself, not so much around me. right? You know, that you take refuge in the practice and what we're collectively creating and building together. So thank you so much for the practice leaders for holding space for that, and all the practice leaders that work with me as well, and all of my retreat teaching assistants and everywhere that I rely on to do this work. Thank you all so much for believing in me, for trusting me, and yeah, and just for really your deep desire for freedom and to help others get free right now. I think this is a really great place to be right now during this period. You know, I think what we're doing together is creating a different kind of future of community and Sangha. And I think this is really important, right? That the community is about us, not me. You know, let the community, let the practice be the community itself. So thank you, everyone. I'm gonna put I think June 10th is when I'll be, not Juneteenth, but June 10th. That's when I'll be in Toronto, but we're gonna get that up as soon as possible. Thank you, everyone. All right, thank you, everyone. I will see you all soon.